It was a usual Sunday for Ebrahim Raisi. The Iranian president traveled to the country's border with Azerbaijan. He met with President Ilham Aliyev. It was a sign of warming relations between the two countries. The leaders shook hands, inaugurated a dam project, and pledged further cooperation.
میتونه یک راه بسیار خوب امنی رو برای ترانزیت کالا، برای عبور مسافر و برای در واقع عبور گردشگران در اینجا کاملا فراهم بکنه.
After a day of diplomacy, it was time to return. The journey was a short one. Ebrahim Raisi boarded his helicopter. Along with him were Foreign Minister Hussein Amir Abdullahian, Iran's East Azerbaijan province governor, head of the Presidential Guard, and a representative of Iran's supreme leader. They were supposed to land in Tabriz soon, but they never did. The helicopter crashed in Iran's northwest, just across the border from Azerbaijan. The cause of the crash is not certain. Most blame bad weather. But one thing was certain. All those on board were dead.
سلام الله جدم balalarını.
1979 was a turning point for Iran. Until then, it was ruled by a Shah who wanted a Western-style secular nation. But the Iranian Revolution changed that. The Shah went into exile. The conservatives came into power. And taking advantage of it were men like Ebrahim Raisi. Raisi was born in 1960 in Iran's Mashhad. His father was a cleric, but he died soon after his birth. You may have seen the black turban he wore. It's a symbol that he traced his heritage back to Prophet Muhammad. At the young age of 15, Raisi began studying at the renowned Qom Religious Seminary. He was taught by several Muslim scholars. When the revolution happened, Raisi supported Khamenei, the first supreme leader of Iran. And thus began his close relationship with Iran's religious establishment. In his early 20s, Raisi was appointed prosecutor. It's a career he would go on to pursue for most of his life. At the age of 28, Raisi was part of the Tehran Death Committee. He was, in fact, the youngest member on the panel. This committee sentenced thousands of political prisoners to death, around 5,000 of them. This earned him a new nickname, the Butcher of Tehran. Raisi has denied his role in the death committee. He said he was just a junior prosecutor. That didn't help his reputation. But what it did was earn him the favor of the new Ayatollah. It was a launch pad for his bigger ambitions. Raisi became Khamenei's favorite. In 2016, he was appointed to run Astan Quds Razavi. It's one of Iran's oldest and wealthiest religious institutions. So it was a big step up. By 2017, Raisi had even bigger ambitions. He was running for president. Raisi went up against Hassan Rouhani, who was running for re-election. But he didn't win. Rouhani got the popular vote. Raisi barely won 7 provinces. So his first attempt was a failure, but he didn't give up. He started planning for the next presidential elections. He tried to soften his image. He tried to talk about the economy, and it worked. But it was also a rigged election, one where reformists and moderates were prevented from standing.
یکی از کارهایی که در دولت مردمی ما دنبال خواهیم کرد ان شاء الله این که همه مردم نقش ایفا کنن به ویژه نخبگان و صاحب نظران.
When he became president, Raisi traveled across the entire country. He promised affordable houses. He promised to fight inflation. He promised to eradicate corruption. But despite all these promises, the economy worsened. And then came 2022. A young woman named Mahsa Amini had traveled to Tehran. She was visiting her family. But on the 13th of September, she was arrested. Why? For apparently wearing her hijab in the wrong way. It was supposed to be standard procedure. She would be given a briefing and she would be out of detention. But instead, Mahsa Amini ended up in the hospital dead. Her death triggered protests across Iran. Women cut their hair. They took off their hijabs. They burnt them. Protests continued for months on end. It was the biggest movement against the regime. And Raisi couldn't just sit still. The protests continued till 2023 until the security forces cracked down. Thousands were arrested, hundreds were killed, many even executed for participating in the protests. The regime has been accused of crimes against humanity, including rape, torture and murder.
مسئله خانم مرحومه امینی همه رو متاثر کرد و همه معتقدن که این قضیه معلوم بشه و روشن بشه. حتما همه ما با هر سلیقه‌ای و با هر نگاهی سیاسی، با هر گویشی از هر جای کشور به این قضیه که باید پیگیری بشه به صورت شفاف و عادلانه این.
So Raisi faced opposition at home, but even internationally there were a few standoffs. The biggest was with Israel. In April, a strike hit Iran's consulate in Damascus. Israel was blamed for it. Iran promised to hit back. For 2 weeks, the world watched its every move with scrutiny. On April 15th, Tehran did hit back. It fired missiles and drones towards Israel. Not much happened and there was little damage in Israel. But Iran could tell its people that it did strike back.
به خاک وطن ما صورت بگیرد و به منافع جمهوری اسلامی ایران یقین بدانند برخوردی بسیار شدید و سهمگین با آنها خواهد شد.
There were some wins too. Raisi cultivated closer ties with both China and Russia. He took Iran into 2 multilateral groups, BRICS and SCO. So Raisi's death affects all of that. But what it affects the most is the future of Iran. You see, the supreme leader is 85 years old. He's looking at a successor, and Raisi was that man. Since 2021, the supreme leader has groomed Raisi. He was close to the establishment. He had the same ideology, the same politics. Raisi was the perfect man for the position. He was meant to take over in the coming years, but his death has left a vacuum. Iran will need to choose a successor soon, and that will determine its future. Raisi's legacy is a mixed one. He may be loved for his loyalty to the regime, but did he rule in the interests of the people? That's a question only Iranians can answer.